Hello everyone, my name is Shivani and I welcome you all to one of the most anticipated sessions of PVLF, Romantic Journeys, exploring love, choices and trends. So let me start by welcoming the authors and today's speakers of course. Firstly we have Miss Jenny Proctor. Jenny Proctor is an award-winning author of more than 14 romantic comedies and an Amazon bestseller. She began her career in publishing in 2013. Her writing has been a constant since then, but she has also spent time as the owner and managing editor of Midnight Owl Editors and the chair of the Storymakers Conference. Wired for relationships, Jenny loves public speaking, teaching, and building lasting connections. Jenny was born in the mountains of western North Carolina, a place she considered one of the loveliest on earth. She loves to hike with her family and spend her time outdoors. But she also adores lounging around her home, reading great books and watching great movies. And when she is lucky eating delicious food, she doesn't have to prepare herself. Welcome Jenny to the session. Thank you for joining the call.
Thank you so much.
Secondly, we have Miss Rita Chhabalani. She alternates her time between India and Chicago. She has written lead articles for reputed Indian and international newspapers. At the College of DuPage, Chicago, while doing her creative writing courses, she and her American author friends founded a highly active all-women critique group. She is also a dedicated member of writers group in Pune. Having worked in UNICEF, the cause of education for girls is very dear to her heart. She devotes a lot of time in teaching English to girls from less privileged households. Uh, I welcome you, ma'am, to the session and thank you so much for joining the call.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Megha and I'm based in Delhi. I'm director of Vivekanand School, which is one of the leading schools in Delhi. We have 5,000 students with us. Along with that, I run an organization called Sashakt, the Ovarian Cancer Foundation, and which is where we are basically working on creating awareness about ovarian cancer. And All I Have Is Love is my first book. Writing is a passion. So that's how I ended up writing romantic fiction.
Thank you for the introduction, ma'am. I welcome you to the session. Thank you for joining the call. Amidst all the emergency, you managed to join. Thank you so much for it. So let me start asking the questions. Okay. So my first question would be, could you provide insights into your creative process in crafting romantic fiction, highlighting any personal experiences that have inspired or influenced your work in this genre? So anybody would like to go first?
Well, yes. So I think Jenny can start. I'll listen.
It's a tough question to answer because I feel like since I was a very small girl, I loved the idea of romance. So I tend to look for those romantic relationships and find a lot of meaning in recognizing relationships where people really love each other. So I think I just maybe walk through the world looking for things that might inspire the ideas that will just give people the opportunity to feel and to connect and to be happy ultimately. And I feel like love and romance and all of those fluttery feelings when people are first meeting, those are the kinds of things that make me happy. And so I just try and be inspired by the world around me and the people that are around me, and then infuse those connections and those feelings and those vibes that I get from people into the characters that I'm writing.
That's very nice, ma'am. Actually, I relate a lot to it, whatever you said. Thank you so much for answering. So Megha ma'am has joined.
Thank you.
So I started the session by asking my first question. I would like to repeat the question for you. So the question was, could you provide insights into your creative process in crafting romantic fiction, highlighting any personal experiences that have inspired or influenced your work in this genre? So Jenny ma'am has already answered. So would you like to answer next?
Sure. So, as far as the creative process is involved, like it was my first book, and as they say, first book is more or less autobiographical in some way or the other.
Yeah.
So, they are more or less the experiences from my life, but uh, adding fiction to it was kind of so the main character is more like less like me. So what I used to do was to give myself a situation and think that what I would do in that particular situation, and then eventually write it. So that's how I went ahead with it.
That's very interesting, and thank you so much for answering. Rita ma'am, would you like to answer the question next?
Yeah, I guess good morning. Good morning to you, Megha, too. Megha, good morning. I hope all is well
Thank you. Good morning.
in your home front. Yeah. So I'm based in Bangalore now, in the Garden City. And, I think writing runs in my genes, as my sons tell me, because, I'm an inveterate storyteller. And as a storyteller, and genes means my father was a writer, and he died young. So when I started writing, suddenly all the stories that I had heard, seen, experienced, they all came tumbling out. As though they were waiting for some spark. And that spark was at the I joined college I was living in Chicago, so I joined college. I thought, let me see what American college life is like, and at my age, so I dressed up, and as one goes to college in India, and I thought I'm going to enter a classroom, where people come in when you go to college. In my days, we went to college very well dressed. So when I reach there, I find people in flip flops and scruffy feet and jeans and with their feet on the chairs, and young people, older people, all age groups, and a class full of creative writing, people who are deeply interested in it. So I said, okay, that's the lesson I learned, that don't judge the book by its cover and don't label anything. So I walked in, and the very next day, I walked in with my cup of coffee. I said, well, now I think live in Rome, do as the Romans do. So I think writing, I've been a writer as long back as I can remember. But my first book, The Joys of Yoga, I think I just wrote that because I was teaching yoga in Delhi, and I was quite a known yoga teacher. So that came to me naturally because my students, I was teaching at the various embassies, and they told me, why don't you write a book? Because they go away after 2, 3 years. So I wrote a book for them. So I guess that book sparked off, and then the course sparked off, and then we had the creative critique group we formed after that college thing, few known authors, American authors and all. And I think that did it. I had no choice but to write. I think it's a passion, and it comes to me, ideas come to me in the middle of the night. So I think I just can't help it but write. And that is why I've written 4 books, and I'll continue writing, God willing.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for answering. I can tell you are into storytelling by the way you answered this question. So
Yes.
let me ask the next question. How do you approach character development in your romantic stories? And are there specific traits you believe make a character more relatable to readers in the context of love and relationships? Anybody would like to go first?
I'm happy to go first for that
Okay.
one.
Okay, let's start with Jenny ma'am then.
I have found when I'm crafting characters, and I've written enough books that I've read a lot of feedback from readers to see how they land. And I really feel like what makes characters someone that people can relate to is making sure that I have explored their motivations. So when my characters do something, do they have a good reason for doing it? Do they have a backstory or a family history or a past relationship or something that's happened in their lives that can justify the actions that they take in the story? So that's what I really focus on when I'm writing, is trying to make sure that everybody has a reason for everything that they do. Because then we connect, right? When we feel like we understand someone, when we feel like we know where they're coming from, even if their actions aren't particularly likable, which is tough when you're writing fiction, because you want your readers to like your people enough to think that they should get together at the end, right? Nobody wants your heroine to wind up with a really terrible guy. And so even when they're making choices that might not be the very best or the wisest choice, if you give them a reason, if you make them just broken enough that it feels like people will understand why they make those choices, then I think that's when you get characters that readers will like, that they'll feel like they understand them. And even see themselves in those characters, because we're all human. We all make good choices and bad choices, and have great relationships, bad relationships. So when you just create these people who have this whole history, that's when I think you can get those connections. At least that's what I try to do.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering. Even I agree. The backstory is very important to make it relatable. Even I agree. Okay, Rita, ma'am, would you like to go next?
Oh, yeah, I think characters is what determines the story. The situations happen, and one needs to, I think I research the characters, I put myself in their shoes, and I would say to myself, what if given a certain situation, this particular situation that they are facing, what is it about me that I like most, and what is it that I detest most? So I make them human, that they have their little frailties, don't have to make a perfect character because there is no perfect human being. And I observe people a lot, and I know there's no black and white in life. And it's universal. The values are universal, and it's upon how you make your choices in life, and it determines your life path. So the same thing I apply to the characters. I get to know them intimately before I start writing. Okay, I know you very well now. I know where you're coming from. So I have to make the person human. So my readers love a human being. They don't like characters who flippantly go through life, on the surface. They don't like, I find that they fall flat, even in books I read. It may be a greatly crafted book, but I don't like it because the characters made no sense to me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the insights. Even I believe that everything in life is gray. It's never black or white. Thank you, ma'am. That was very insightful. Okay, Megha, ma'am.
Yeah, I also absolutely agree to that. That uh, we have to actually fall in love with our characters ourselves before writing them. So each one of the character, we need to know them in and out before actually writing about them. So that's how I think, even if they're not inspired from the real life, we have to make them as human as possible, so that we know them, like in a particular situation, how that particular character, from based on what he or she is coming from, will react. We should have that know how, to a great extent, so that when we are writing, we don't have to think twice before writing a particular reaction from that character, because we know that this is how that character is and this is how they'll react in a particular situation. So that's what I said, that it's important to fall in love with each of your character, to know them in and out, and then write about them.
Thank you so much for answering, ma'am. So let me ask the next one. Can you describe your writing process when delving into the romantic genre? How do you evoke emotion and create a connection between your characters and readers? So let me start by Megha ma'am this time. So as you were saying that you have to evoke the emotions and fall in love with the characters. So can you please elaborate?
So for me, so if you're writing from your heart, like if it's coming straight from your heart, then it reaches the heart. That's the only rule I follow. So whatever I write, it comes straight from my heart. I go deep into it, and like whatever I'm feeling, it comes out on the paper, and that's how it reached the hearts. And that's what I've actually worked for my book.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for answering. Rita ma'am, would you like to go next?
I think I write more about love, and I think romance is something I am here because, yes, romance is a part of love. I think romance is much overrated, and it's a sort of chemical. I think it's so fleeting and burns itself out before you even know what romance is really all about. Actually, it is all about love, and love is something that is can be translated into care, into doing stuff for others, into gratitude, into so many things. Love, I think, basically, I think romance has been generated by movies mainly. And that is why I feel that, we all feel we want that grand romance. And I think I cater more to my stories, and my books cater more to love. And love is permanent, it's lasting because you translate it into so many things. Yeah. That's what it is.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was very interesting approach to it, I would say. Yeah, even I feel, if I think about it, that romance is really overrated. Yeah. So, Jenny, ma'am.
I love what you've said, Rita, about love. I find that when a lot of people in romance novels, there's this expectation that there'll be this big gesture at the end of the book that has to be really public or over the top. And I tend to resist those moments when I'm crafting my stories. Like, I want a quiet proposal in the kitchen where it's just the two of them and it feels really meaningful. I tend to lean more into those emotional connections. So what you said really resonated with me. When it comes to my writing process, I really don't. I think I do, like, we've talked a lot about characters, and that's such an important part of the process, is getting to know your characters. And I tend to plot less when I'm writing and more just sort of settle into the story and see where the characters take me. Which, people have different styles about their writing. Some people plot out every single bit and they know exactly what's going to happen in every chapter. And I tend to just more sort of jump in and just go and see where my words lead. I always hit a point, it's normally at about 30%, where I start to panic and think, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how this is going to end. And then I'll have to stop and think and reconnect and make sure that I'm going in a direction that I can make work for the whole story. But I really think that in romance, as we've already mentioned, the story is so character driven that if you plot too much, if you plan too much, you run the risk of losing those emotional threads that sort of compel you forward. So it's a little scarier because sometimes I sit down to write and I don't actually know what's going to happen. Sometimes I'll write a scene and think, well, I didn't know that ex-girlfriend was going to show up, or I'll surprise myself with the way the story goes. But I think you just have to trust it. You have to trust that if you know the characters you're writing about, you'll get them where they need to go and it'll work in the end.
Thank you so much for answering, ma'am. So let me move to the next question. Friendship often plays a role in romantic journeys. How do you approach depicting friendships in your romantic stories? And what significance do friends have in the character's romantic development? So I would like Rita ma'am to answer first.
Okay. Yeah, I guess friendship really, I think everything begins with friendship, actually. There is no electricity or lightning or thunder, exploding when you meet the person you love. Yes, your eyes would meet, but I guess you have to let friendship take its course, even when it's between two people. Or otherwise, friends fill your heart. And if when you become a friend with that person, you somehow, I think those if it turns into a romance, very good. If it doesn't, then also very good. You've made a friend. And I think friendships last forever. And if you discover romance with the person on the way without any expectations, and you discover this is someone I want to be with, I think so be it. I have nothing against romance. I just feel that it's not something that suddenly there'll be a thunderstorm or there'll be some lightning or thunder. At my age, I think I've been there, done that, everything I've done. So even romance to that to that extent. But at the end of the day, I think being with a person whom and you're comfortable with, and you're able to speak your mind, and that is a friend. That you can say what you want, and there's no restriction on what you have to do or not do. And then if it turns into romance, I think it's the jewel on the crown then. Yeah, so for me, friends are very important. Friendship is very, very important, female or male. And it's just, that's a beautiful, it's love in a different form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your answer reminds me of this Bollywood movie, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, Pyar Dosti Hai, that famous dialogue. Megha ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you for answering.
friendship has played a very major role. In fact, reviews, it's that one friend who's always admired more than the main characters. Because I think it's very, very important to have friends in life. And our books are more or less a reflection of life only.
Yeah.
And with your, like with the person you like, you're little reserved. You take time to open work.
Yeah.
But it's the friends in front of whom you're your real true self. So that's what I think we project in books as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for answering. It was a very nice perspective. Jenny, ma'am.
Absolutely. I think friends can be really, I think friendship can be important when it is your characters who are friends first before they fall in love. And friendship can also be a very positive way to help characters figure out how they should affect their relationships. I mean, I have friends who their opinions mean so much to me, and they know me better sometimes than I know myself. And so, we can learn from those who are around us. And I really love being able to utilize those friendships in books. Like the friend who just gives you the wisdom that you need exactly when you need it, or the brother who will tell it to you straight when you just are caught up in your own head and you can't see the situation for what it is. Those relationships can be really, really important and useful as an author to help nudge your character in the direction you want them. A good friendship can really be great. It's getting advice from a stranger on the street. It's not going to have the same impact when it's someone who really loves you and cares about you. So building those relationships and creating that dynamic where those moments can happen, I think is really important. I have a love for secondary characters in my stories and wanting to surround my characters with family and friends who love them. And I have a lot of fun writing bigger casts in my novels. And so, yeah, I think friendship is such a huge part. That's a great question.
Thank you for answering, ma'am. Even I get more attracted to the secondary characters when I'm listening to a story or something. So I relate very much to it. Thank you. So let me move to the next question. If your romantic narratives touch on multiple genres, how do you strike a balance between the romantic elements and other themes? How does this contribute to a richer reading experience? So, Megha ma'am, would you like to go first?
Yes, so my book, they put it in a motivational romantic genre. So the thing was that I didn't try to make it romance. I didn't try to make it motivational either. So it was basically character driven thing, and I was just writing, and the story was just flowing, and it was just that two characters met, and this girl who's the main character, and she's the one who's kind of doing things in her life that end up motivating people. So while writing, the idea was not to make it either motivational, or it was kind of a slice of a life book where I was writing, bringing my experiences into fiction, like so whatever I do. So it ended up being motivational because there were a lot of motivational things that that character do. So it was based in a hospital, so she was kind of helping people out there. She was kind of going and like meeting the kids in the pediatric wards and doing stuff that people usually don't do. So, and which is kind of me being running in two NGOs, and like I work a lot with special children, and I work a lot. So it was more or less my experiences that were in real life that I've kind of added into that story. So though it ended up being motivational, but it was not motivational. It was not purposefully motivational. So that's how it flowed.
That's very
So I
interesting.
think
Yeah, please.
uh, I think that if you try something, like you try hard for something, that it will not come
Yeah.
out well. I think it should flow in the story. It should be part of the story. And if there is an like if it ends up being something else, then it's good that if it inspires people or it helps them. Like I got reviews where the girl wrote to me that she lost her dad and she read my story and she kind of, it helped her heal. The story helped her heal. So those are the reviews that are quite rewarding, and those are the things that make you feel okay, you've done a great job. But if while writing, if you'll keep this in mind that you want to help people out of it, I'm sure it's not going to work well.
Thank you so much for such useful insights. That's very interesting, actually. Now I want to, I haven't read your book yet, to be honest, but now I want to read it. I will surely read it and will obviously write to you. Thank you, ma'am. So, Jenny, ma'am, would you like to go next?
Sure. I feel like my novels they all land pretty solidly in the romantic comedy genre. I've written a few other novels that have been a little bit different, but this is definitely the place where I feel most comfortable. But I will say that I try really hard to make sure that if there is something else going on in the book, like in How to Kiss Your Best Friend, it the main character is a whitewater kayaker. So he goes down the river in these tiny boats. And I didn't know anything about whitewater kayaking at all. And so I did a lot of research. I called, actually have my brother-in-law is a whitewater kayaker, and I spent so much time with him on the phone, just talking and getting all of the details right. And I think that kind of research, it wasn't a huge part of the story, but it definitely was a huge part of his character development. And so I think that when we're going to cross over and pull in something that's a little bit different, that research is really important. I've still never been whitewater kayaking, but I had a lot of people respond and say, I feel like I learned something new. And so I think we can learn a lot. I'm very good at internet research, and I've watched a lot of videos. And so I think we have to, if we haven't had the experience ourselves, do the research to get the details right, because somebody else knows those details. And if you get them wrong, they will email you and tell you. And so I think it's just, that can be really fun. It can add a different element to the story when you pull in something that's just a little bit of a different flavor. You can't just have characters sitting around talking to each other about their feelings all the time. Like they gotta have something going on. So give them some action, give them a place to go, a thing to do. So I would say research is really important. I try and do good research.
Much for answering, ma'am. Okay, so Rita, ma'am.
Yeah, I remember when I was writing my After Joys of Yoga, when the first book, the book after that happened, and it was Despite Odds. It's called Despite Odds, Tales of Choices. And so it shows that, yes, odds and choices are a part of life. And so when I selected those stories for that theme in that book, I had to do, as Jenny was saying, research, because there are things, I mean, I don't know everything about everything. So my motto was simple. I want it to be inspiring, because I've been teaching in these two NGOs to girls from less privileged backgrounds. I want them to be entertained, which means they enjoy reading a story instead of being preached upon. And they also get inspired to make choices like the women in that book made. So in the book, there was one story where there's a case of bride burning. And I don't know everything about what happens in bride burning case. There's an NGO that got involved. So basically, I didn't want to get into the whole process, but at least I had to be right that how do I present? What is the sequence of events when you're trying to get into a story which has a young girl being, bride burning is quite common in some parts of India. So I need to get it right. So research, I think, whether it is character research or whether it is what they do research or whether it is location research. For instance, I'm in Goa now. I can't be writing about the winter in Delhi. Basically, you have to be true to that place too. So I think writing is beautiful because you're so involved. I think I forget to cook sometimes because I'm so busy doing research and I don't have to cook, but I forget to eat basically, and then somebody has to remind me, okay, you've forgotten, you're supposed to eat your lunch. But that's what research does. And a story that involves you is going to involve your readers. But yeah, that's what Jenny said.
Thank you so much for answering, ma'am. Yes, it's very cold in Delhi. I would like to say that.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so let me start the individual questions now. So
Yes.
let me start with Jenny, ma'am. So romantic comedies often balance human with deeper emotion moments. How do you find the right balance to create a story that resonates with readers emotionally while providing laughter?
I really love this question because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
So I will, I think the most important thing is after I write a draft where I know I've written a really emotionally intense scene. So they've said the I love you, or they have just crossed a bridge where something significant has happened and they've had a real emotional connection. I always make sure that once I'm done writing, I leave it alone. And then I come back on a different day, preferably a week or two later, and I read it again with fresh eyes, because almost always when I come back to it and I'm not right in the throes of those emotions, because when you write them, you feel them and they're very intense. And so I always come back and I read it again. And almost always I find the places that I just think, oh, that's so cheesy, or oh no, he can't say that. So I will find the places that I need to lighten it up a little bit and add a little bit of humor, or because those moments can mean so much. But if it's too much, you risk crossing over into melodrama, or where it's going to feel a little bit too angsty or too dramatic. And the last thing I want is for anyone to roll their eyes and go, ugh, no one would ever say that when they're reading my book. So I think revisiting is a really important part of the process. And just adding, you don't want, I love those emotional connections. I don't want them all to be funny, but I do think just a little bit of lightness can keep us from getting too caught up in the feelings, and then they can maybe even have more of an impact. So it really is finding the right balance. But I found that's key in my writing process, is just revisiting and reading with fresh eyes so that I can see the moments that either need the humor or just need to not be so dramatic.
For the answer, ma'am. Even for me as an audience, like enjoying two genres in one story is very tricky. Like I can feel whatever you are saying. Thank you so much for answering. So
Sure.
next question is for Megha, ma'am. So your debut novel, All I Have Is Love, is a motivational romance fiction. What motivated you to blend romance with motivational elements, and how do you believe love can be a transformative force?
Love can surely be a transformative journey. Like, if you meet the right person in your life can take a different turn altogether. So, whatever we have planned, we sometimes don't believe what we are capable of. If there is another person who believe in you, it helps us do wonders at times. So, in the book, if I talk about my debut novel, All I Have Is Love, I have not at all intentionally kind of weaved motivation into it. It was a very light, easy read. It was meant to be it is a very light, easy read, and that's what it is. It was meant to be because that's the kind of genre I like reading, like the kind of book you pick and you end up reading in a day or two. It ended up being motivational because it had elements from my own life. Because I kind of like if I tell about myself, I run an NGO called Sashakt the Ovarian Cancer Foundation, and which started because I've lost my mother to ovarian cancer. So that's how where I realized that there is a lack of kind of awareness about like if I would have known the symptoms of ovarian cancer, my mom would have been here today. So that's where I felt that I would probably kind of support some organization that is working for ovarian cancer, and then I find out that in India there was not even a single organization that was working for ovarian cancer, and that's how Sashakt came into being, and we started working on it. And while working, I interact with like lots and lots of cancers survivors and patients, and I ended up being motivated by meeting them. So there are a lot of experiences in my life. I ran a special school as well for special children. So where we kind of vocationally train them and try to make them uh, like self-sufficient. So along with that, in the school also with the students, we do a lot of things. There's a something called Light Up a Life campaign where we ask children to find out dreams of lesser privileged children, and like anybody who's lesser privileged than them, and turn those dreams into reality. So that's that I have like a lot of experiences through these campaigns. And the whole idea of our being, I think, is to make life better for other people around us in whatever ways, small ways we can, whatever is in our so that's what is my core belief. In whatever I do, that's what lies behind it. And that's how my character Inaya is. So she also, wherever she goes, she finds ways to like, she's that girl who will find ways to help people even when she's herself going through a torment. So the backstory of the character is also such where she's lost her parents and she's trying to rebuild her life. So it ended up being motivational because she's doing those small little things. So there is no gyan at all in the book. So it's not like purposefully told like it's not motivational in a way where you kind of read those non-fiction motivational book. It's not at all motivational in that way. It ended up being motivational because she's doing things in her life that are little different from what other people do. So I think it's very kind of naturally flowed in the story, and that is why I think it has reached hearts as well.
So much for answering, ma'am. Your story is truly inspirational, I would say. Very inspired. Thank you, ma'am. So, Rita, ma'am, the next question is for you. Your books span genres from yoga to suspense thrillers. How do you navigate the diverse themes in your romantic narratives? And what draws you to explore different aspects of love in your writing?
Yeah, spanning different genres, I think we all, I in my life have spanned different genres. I have stories which, you can, how I write a suspense thriller after a book like Despite Odds, which showed women in dire circumstances and facing tough life and facing all this bright burning and everything. This came at a time when I think I had, when an author is writing, you're actually living those stories yourself in your mind. And it kind of gets tough sometimes because the subject matter of Despite Odds was very tough. And that is probably the period of my life which I was going through. So it came across, your stories come across in whatever you're facing at that point of your life. So you put your heart and soul into it. So suspense thriller just came alive because my son, he's in the TV world. So he just mentioned this idea at home one day and he said, why don't you write something about this? So suspense thriller, it's all thanks to him. It sort of lightened my state of mind. And then first it began as a short story, then it grew into a novella, and thanks to my critique group in Chicago, turn it into a novel, turn it into a novel. And it became a novel. So that's done with. And then the next thing, naturally, when your heart is light, my book, We Will Be Together Always, my last book, it turned out to be a book which said, what if we unlabel relationships? That's what it is about. So when you unlabel relationships and you love just happens, it's not just, when you say relationship, you'll talk about your spouse or best friend or siblings or your children, grandchildren. But what about love? It's there everywhere around you. And it comes in different forms, different friends. For instance, in this book, We Will Be Together Always, there's a waiter, this man, IT sector guy, very status conscious guy, meets this waiter in a little restaurant where he's gone to eat some fresh, delicious food. And he develops a relationship with the waiter, and what would they have in common? So I think it's love, basically, again, and not romance. Though there's romance in the suspense thriller, and there's some little rays of romance that could develop in each story if one deeply looks into that. And some of my students, they look at me and ask me many times, do you think in this story this relationship could have developed into a romance? I said, see, that's what a writer does. She leaves things to your imagination. And it is for you to take the story to your hearts and say, okay, I think a romance was possible. But for me, I think these stories, when my students read them and find a meaning and get inspired and find a purpose, I feel very, very satisfied. And during COVID, now the next step to go, when I'm asked, what is the next step after this book, what book? I think COVID brought about a spiritual realization within me that I do service, I write, I'm a good grandmother, I think so. And I do all that. But spiritual realization, so then a book came about at that time. So I think genres, this is a coming of age story. So genres, I think, are only defined because of our publishing world. Otherwise, we are a mixed genre, aren't we? All of us. Yeah,
Yes,
mixed bag.
I truly agree with whatever you said. Thank you so much for answering, ma'am. So, before we conclude the session, I would like each one of you to give a thought that you want our audiences to leave the session with. Anybody can start. Rita, ma'am, can you start?
Yeah, for me, I think the message is that don't search for romance. Love. I think love is in the air and it is everywhere. And as my book, We Will Be Together says, love can happen anytime, anywhere, and with anyone. All you have to do is keep your heart in the explore mode and don't box love. Don't box it. So that's
Don't
my
label
message.
and don't label it.
And don't label it either.
Thank you,
You
ma'am.
got it.
Thank you so much. Jenny, ma'am.
I think I would say read the books that make you happy and feel good about reading the books that make you happy. I know, and you know, I can speak about the attitudes within the United States because that's where I am. But a lot of people look down on the romance genre. Like they're not real books, or they might write a review and say, well, it's just a romance or it's just a rom-com. But, and I think that I don't know what leads us to think that maybe those kinds of stories aren't as important. I think they're actually the most important. Because the relationships that we have with each other, that we have with our families and our spouses and our kids, that love that Rita has been talking about, that's what makes the fabric of our lives. I mean, that's what, like, reconnecting with our humanity and remembering that. And stories can do so many things. And I love the stories that are harder to read and that hit the hard-hitting subjects. But sometimes I just want to read a book that makes me feel happy. And that is okay. Like, it is okay to read lots of different kind of genres. It's okay to want the books that lift your hearts and make you feel hope and make you believe in love. And so that, I just want people to embrace all kinds of books and be proud and happy that the books that are just about love, those can actually be really meaningful. So read what you love and love reading it.
Yeah, I can really relate to it. If you have a romantic book in hand, you really are looked down upon. So so thank you so much, ma'am. Megha, ma'am, what would you like to say?
Yeah. I think what all of us have is love for everyone around us. If we can show it a little more, if we can go around and make strangers happy, if we can do anything to kind of, if we can do anything to make people around us happy in any possible way, we should not stop ourselves from doing that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for
Yes,
answering. Even I agree to it that over everything, love prevails. So yeah, thank you so much for today's session. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
thank
everyone,
you.
for joining the
Thank
call.
you.
Let's